So today we're going to talk about mountains and rivers, and that's because you are year 4 and you are exploring something Misty Mountains, if I understand correctly. Now mountains, I first met mountains when I was about 13, because I used to go all the way to a place called the Hebrides. Let me show you where that is. If you look at this big map of Scotland, the first thing you see is Scotland is full of mountains. These are the brown areas on the map, and surrounded by the big sea, and the Hebrides are islands across to the west here. The inner Hebrides, the outer Hebrides, and we used to go for what you would call expeditions. In other words, camping for about 2 weeks at a time in the summer. You would take the train all the way, in my case from London. You would sleep on the train in little beds and get up to about here and take a ship, and it would sail out across this piece of sea called the Minch, and after maybe 11 hours you would arrive at one of these islands. Then you had to take all your stuff off the ship and you put it on the side of the port there, and either, if you were lucky, there was a tractor and a trailer that would take it to where your campsite was. If not, as I remember on one island, you had to walk from the shoreline all the way up the valleys into the mountains where your camp would be. That might be a 2 or 3 hour walk, and then a 2 or 3 hour walk back to get some more. Your rucksacks, your tents, your boxes of stuff and food and supplies. Oh, it took all day. And then what you had to do, you put up a big tent called a marquee, like those things you have weddings in. And in there you would eat and meet and talk things through. You'd also cook and wash up in there. Around here would be tents which would sleep about 6 of you at a go. And the furniture, no, you didn't bring the furniture with you. No plastic tables or barbecue suite. No, 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 no. You had to go down to the seaside and look for wood that had come up from the sea, that had been thrown into the sea from ships, bits of packing case and what have you, and you would bring the wood up, and with a saw and a hammer and nails you would build the furniture, the big long table, the benches. It was quite something. But after 2 weeks, most comfortable thing in the world. And when you were on this, excuse me, on this expedition, you would do different things each day. You might go canoeing in the sea, or you might go for a long walk looking for something interesting, or you might go into the mountains themselves and climb. You would walk and walk and walk, and it was very hot, and it was a long way, and you'd have to carry all the ropes and stuff, and you would find a big steep-sided part of the mountain, and you would, with ropes and people here, people there, you would climb up. Oh, it was very frightening. You didn't know where to put your hand or if your foot was going to slip, and when you looked around, whoa, that was a long way to the ground. But when you got to the top, you would think, wow, I did that. I achieved something. I climbed that mountain. And then in later life you would think, yeah, I'll climb other mountains, I will achieve other things. And I remember one time on one island we went for one of these little mini expeditions of about 2 nights, and we went and camped up over the mountain, down the valley between more mountains, and there was a sudden stop. There was a cliff, and down below was the raging sea. So we camped up here out of the way. And at night, you could hear this. In the cliff were big gaps called chasms, as if someone had got a big knife and stuck it in and opened it up. And the sea would rush into the chasm and make a big boom, boom sound. And all night long you could hear boom, boom. It was like the heartbeat of the earth, as if some big beast was waiting just to come out and grab you. And even now, in my dreams, I can hear that boom, boom sound. Then, many years later, I mean about 40 years ago, we moved to Italy. And here you can see the northern part of Italy. Here's the long leg bit going down there. But the northern part, you notice these big mountains. Here they are. They're called the Alps. And often they're covered in snow. Other mountains are always covered in snow, so they paint them white. But these are just purple. And we lived here, in a valley, at the bottom of the Alps, near a river called the Sesia. And at the top of the valley where we lived was a great big white mountain called Monte Rosa, or the Rose Mountain. And Monte Rosa was above everything and always white, always covered in snow, and it loomed over you. And I remember in, it would have been 1981, on the first day of the year, 1st of January, I thought, I'll just drive up into the foothills and see what there is to be seen. And I could see this in that crystal blue, clear air of that first day of the year. I could see right away round the mountains like that. Behind me, Monte Rosa. Much further down, another famous point or peak, and it was called the Matterhorn. Very distinctive shape. And even further, about here, I could see a French named mountain called Mont Blanc, or the White Mountain. I drove under that mountain to go to Italy in a tunnel, and it was 11 kilometers long. Can you imagine that? And the middle mountain came back into my life years ago because our younger daughter, she went to live there, working in a hotel where people did skiing. You know, they come up, they stay in the hotel, and they get up the next day and they go up in those fancy chair lifts and they go zoom, 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 skiing all the way down, very fast, very exciting. Whenever she opened her window in the morning, she would see this particular mountain here. The Swiss call it the Matterhorn, but the Italians call it Cervino. And here on this badge, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little picture of the White Mountain that she would see. And she told me something interesting. She said, Dad, next time you look at a big Toblerone bar, you know those triangular shaped long bars, all gold, with chocolate, you just want to eat all of it in one go. Ah! She said, look at the picture at the end of the bar, down here. She said, there's a picture of a mountain. That's the mountain I can see out of my window. That's Cervino, or the Matterhorn. And I looked at it, I said, oh yes, yes, you can see. It's got the shape, it's got the snow. She said, now look at the snow. And I looked, she said, can you see the dancing bear? And sure enough, if you look on the end, at the mountain of the Toblerone packet, the snow is the shape of a dancing bear. Remember that, because a bear comes into one of our stories later on. Now, my wife actually comes from the south of Italy, which is down here. And here we go. There's Sicily there. Here's Naples. Here's a very big mountain called Vesuvius, a volcano which is still ready to go. She's sleeping at the minute. But my wife came from the mountains about here. So she was brought up in a little tiny village in between big mountains. They had names. This mountain was called Le Campole, and the children and the villagers used to go up every autumn to gather loads and loads of chestnuts. And across here, a great big mountain called Friend. And I remember climbing up Friend once. It took a long time, and I stood on the top and I could see for miles. I could see down into her village and just about hear the bell ding ding in the church. And then I turned round, and far away, rising out of the mist, was the shape of the volcano Vesuvius, the beast which is sleeping. The volcano that covered Pompeii and Herculaneum. And oh, what an impression that made. And further away, my friend has a little farm, and he said, come with me for a walk in the mountains. And we walked all afternoon, up and up and up and up, until we came nearly to the top. And he said, look behind you. And there was like a great dark mouth in the mountain. It was a cave. And he said, come into the cave. And it was dark and cold. And he said, people used to live here thousands of years ago. And you could just imagine them sitting round a big fire, eating something, and looking out through the trees over the distant valley. And he said, now turn round and look again. And we did exactly that. We looked through the trees, across the distant valleys. He said, what can you see? And I looked and I said, I can see more mountains very far away. They're covered in snow. And he said, yes, they're the Abruzzi mountains. And he said, do you know what lives there? I said, no, what? He said, wolves, even now. Wolves like this one, and this one. And I thought, wow, just a few miles away, wolves are walking and watching. And that's just a few things about mountains and what they can feel like. And when you're among them, they're so big and they watch you and you think, how wonderful is this? Now, we're going to go on into the next film and we're going to hear a story about a man and his boy. He was a hunter, and what they did in the mountains thousands of years ago. I'll see you in a minute.